Hello and welcome to Expedited Category number 6, a presentation by Solutions IRB. My name is Cassidy Nosecable and I'm pretty new to the IRB world too, so we'll be learning this together. Before we specifically dive into category number 6, let's talk about what an expedited study is. And if you've seen some of our other presentations, this might look a little familiar. Expedited studies are studies where the research presents no more than minimal risk to subjects and involves only procedures listed in one or more of the 9 expedited categories. It's really important to note that expedited does not mean fast. Instead, it's just referring to a level of review. That being said, here at Solutions IRB, we do get expedited studies done very quickly. Occasionally, we see some confusion between expedited studies and exempt studies. Exempt studies are listed as less than minimal risk and fit one of the 8 exempt categories. Whereas, like we just talked about on the previous slide, expedited studies are listed as not greater than minimal risk and fit one of the 9 expedited categories. So the big difference between those two is how close they get to that level of minimal risk. Exempt studies are going to be very, very low risk. So an example of an exempt study would be research with de-identified data or like anonymous surveys. Things where your participants are at very little risk of any of their information being leaked or any of those survey answers being connected back to them. That risk is very low. Whereas expedited studies, you might be doing surveys, but maybe they're not anonymous. Maybe you're doing research on a specific individual or group, and so you need to know a little bit more about your participants. That's going to bump that risk level up a little bit, but it's still not going to go above minimal risk. Now that big difference between exempt and expedited was how close they got to the level of minimal risk. But what is minimal risk? Minimal risk is defined as the probability and magnitude of harm or discomfort anticipated in the research are not greater than those ordinarily encountered in daily life or during the performance of routine physical or psychological examinations or tests. So to put that in layman's terms, it essentially means that the risks to your participants are not higher than the risks that they're already encountering in their day-to-day lives. This presentation is specifically on expedited category number 6, so let's dive into that. Category number 6 is defined as the collection of data from voice, video, digital, or image recordings made for research purposes. The really important thing to note with this is that for research purposes section. There are some other categories that would include collecting similar types of data, but those would be collected for non-research purposes. So make sure you're paying attention if you are submitting under category number 6 that your data has been collected specifically for research. Let's go over some examples of studies that would fit under expedited category number 6. One example would be recording multiple sessions of an experimental curriculum and studying the student improvement throughout the course. So let's say you record the very first time they're using the curriculum, a couple times in between, and the very last time, and you're just seeing how they interact with that curriculum, whether there is improvement or not improvement, and just using those recordings for your research. Digital recordings of Zoom meetings when done for research, so maybe you're doing interviews via Zoom. That would be a good example of something that would fit under category 6. Audio or video recording focus groups or interviews. Again, as long as it's for research, it fits. Recording participants wearing an approved device to study how they interact with the device. So that is a really good example of something that would fit under category 6. And video recording of wear and tear of use of exhibits in a museum setting. So let's say you've got some new exhibits out, you want to see how people are interacting with them, so you've got video on the exhibit and you're just watching how people interact with your displays. Again, because you are recording and collecting that data for research, it fits under category 6. The primary function of an IRB is to protect human participants in research. And because of that, we've got several levels of review, and there are a few factors that might cause your expedited study to actually have to get bumped up to full board in order to protect those participants and make sure that all our bases are covered. So one thing that might cause your study to get bumped up to full board from an expedited are sensitive topics of conversation. So let's say you are doing Zoom interviews that you're going to be recording, so it seems like it should fit under category 6, but the questions in your interviews are really sensitive. That is going to cause your study to get bumped up. Another factor that might cause your study to get bumped up is if you're working with vulnerable populations. So if you're recording interviews with prisoners, that would cause your study to go from expedited to full board. Really just anything that makes those risks to your participants higher than minimal risk, that's going to cause you to have to go to full board. Because remember, the definition of expedited is that your research is no greater than minimal risk to the participants and fits under the categories. So even if you think you fit perfectly under category 6, if those risks to your participants are above minimal, it's going to be a full board study. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can visit our website at www.solutionsirb.com, or you can shoot us an email at correspondence@solutionsirb.com. Thanks again.